Hello, I am Li Kynvi. I'm the intern minister at First Parish Church of Groton, Massachusetts. I use they, them pronouns. Reverend Aaliyah Kemmler and I are so glad you're here. We are a community seeking to deepen spiritually, to take care of one another, and to be a blessing to this world. Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all. So whoever you are, whatever country you come from, whoever you love, whatever you've done, whatever your beliefs, abilities, gifts, challenges, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. Our spiritual community is vibrant and alive here in Groton, Massachusetts, and also with members and friends across the country. If you'd like more information about First Parish, our programs, events, small groups, email us at welcome@uugroton.org, and we'd be thrilled to get you connected. We have certainly learned through the COVID-19 pandemic that our sanctuary is not confined to our building. We co-create sanctuary all the time in so many ways. These days, we are still worshiping in the chilly outdoors at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings in front of our meeting house. So some of this service was filmed there. Less than a week ago, I returned from a meditation retreat at the site of the German Nazi concentration and extermination camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, located in Poland. Today's reflection centers on that experience. So please be aware of the subject matter and care for yourself in any way you need to. It's an intense topic, it's challenging, and I believe it's really important. I will not describe any horrifying images. Wherever and from wherever you are joining us, we sure hope you'll be able to come on in and just rest for a while, receive hope and strength. You are so welcome here. Less than a week ago, I returned from a meditation retreat at Auschwitz-Birkenau, and significant parts of the service today will focus on that. It's challenging material, needless to say, and each of us responds differently. So I just want to speak an invitation to please take care of yourself as needed. That may be orienting yourself to the present, looking at the sky, the beautiful building behind us. It may be rocking or swaying in your seat. It may be touching the ground, getting up, walking around. I will not describe anything like a horrifying image, but it is a lot, and it's intense. If you find you need someone to talk with after the service, I'm available, and also Barbara Rich has agreed to be available. She's one of our pastoral visitors. She's waving her hand there. I am so touched that Marcel Cates will be lighting our chalice this morning. Following the chalice, please remain seated, and Alison will lead us in singing Spirit of Life, first in Spanish and then in English.
I am Marcel Vanderland Cates. Lee went to Poland and visited Auschwitz, among other places, with a list of names to be read aloud and left on the altar. I gave her a list of 19 names of relatives that I am aware that died in Auschwitz. I also told her the story behind that, which I'm about to tell you, and her response was the following. So much of our lives and our circumstances were determined by particular moments in our ancestors' lives. I am a Dutch immigrant. Around 1939, my father, who was a Dutch citizen, went to the Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia, to make his fortune. At that time, the colony was the Netherlands was to the what the Old West was to the U.S. East Coast, the land of opportunity. Once established, he sent for my mother, who in turn caught the last boat from the Netherlands to the Dutch East Indies before World War II broke out. I was born in the Dutch East Indies. In 1942, the colony was invaded by Japan, and we spent a few years in a concentration camp. My father in one, my mother in another, and strange as it may seem, we were fortunate. If we had stayed in the Netherlands, we too would have ended up in Auschwitz, because about half of the town of Assen, where my mother lived, were sent to Auschwitz, a large number of which were members of the Vanderland family, my mother's maiden name and now part of my last name. In 1990, as part of a family reunion, my aunt and I, as a stand-in for my mother who had passed away, dedicated a memorial to those victims in Assen. The inscription states that 550 of the residents were taken and only 25 ever returned. As a continuing remembrance, I had asked Lee to read the list of names. The inscription also reminds us to never forget.
Our gathering words to begin with and our little gestures. We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands ready to help.
So, as I talk, I want us to pay attention and listen to a couple of phrases. And one of them is freeze up. So when you hear the phrase freeze up, you get to stop where you are for just a second, like freeze tag, and maybe close your eyes if you want to, until I start talking again. Okay? You can do it? Let's try it. Freeze up. Yeah. Okay. And the other is when you hear speak up. So I invite you to repeat that loudly when you hear it. So let's try it. Speak up. Speak up. Oh, yeah. Okay. Even louder if there are motorcycles going by, right? So sometimes we might see or hear something when we're just in our regular lives that doesn't quite match with what feels right in our heart. Maybe it's like a mean, hateful comment, and maybe it's something somebody says to make other people feel like they're not as good as us, or, you know, some kind of something that makes people feel, that makes you feel uncomfortable. Can anybody raise your hand if you can think of a time like that, when you've heard somebody say something like that that really made you feel like, oh, we probably shouldn't be saying that. Yeah. It kind of happens a fair amount. And it's really hard if it's about you, right? And it's also really hard when it's about somebody else. We hear it, and it kind of feels wrong in our belly or our heart or our shoulders or wherever things for us feel wrong, the back of the throat sometimes. And sometimes, you know, basically in our minds we think, ooh, that's not okay. But then what do, right? I mean, some of us are sort of people who can easily say, whoa, why'd you say that? Or who can say, you know, that sounds mean. But a lot of us get nervous. Anybody get nervous when that happens? Yeah. And our throat kind of closes, and maybe we don't want to get into a fight with the other person, or maybe we just feel shy, or maybe we're afraid of what'll come out of our mouth, or we're afraid they're going to start picking on us instead, and we don't know what to say, and we sort of freeze up. Yeah. But as Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the worth and dignity of every person, that every single person is important. So when we hear hateful words, we actually have to do something, we say something, because that's our faith. But it takes practice. We have to train ourselves not to freeze up. We have to train ourselves how to speak up. Yo. It's really important. Why? Why is it important? So I want to show you something called the Pyramid of Hate. It sounds like a terrible place, right? But fortunately, it's not an actual place or an actual pyramid. But it is a way of thinking about why it's so important to respond in moments like that. Moments when you hear a hateful comment or a joke that's meant to make other people feel bad, and to make usually the joke teller feel better somehow. The idea is that if this pyramid is allowed to keep growing, then the hate that it represents can escalate. It can get worse, and worse things can happen. The first layer of it is biased attitudes. It's in our mind. It's ideas like, those people are bad. It's ideas like, people like that are a little scary. It's ideas like, those people should stay away from me. Those people are not like us. Now, it's not that having these thoughts themselves is like something that we can avoid, right? It just comes up in us. But the idea is we have to watch it, and we have to ask ourselves, are those people really bad? What am I doing talking about a whole group of people? Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Why am I feeling scared? Because if we don't interrupt those thoughts, the next layer of the pyramid is words. And that could be name calling. It could be bullying. It could be hateful words about a group of people in a public place. It could be somebody carving a certain hateful symbol on a tree or spray painting it. Well, I guess if we're just on words, so, right, it could be a joke, right? The out loud things. The next layer is the actions. So now we're talking about somebody spray painting something, insulting language on a wall, carving it into a tree, a social media post, right? If it keeps going, it can keep getting worse, and it can move into the area of discrimination. So this is when maybe people propose hateful laws that take away other people's rights, right? If not enough people speak up, then the people in power start to be able to do things like arrest people and send them to jail for very little or for no reason. And from there, it can move into these really, really scary top layers of the pyramid. And this is where the lying and the bullying turns into actually hurting other people's bodies. And that is part of what happened during the Second World War. This full pyramid was allowed to grow. This full pyramid of hate was allowed to grow against Jewish people and against some other groups of people in Europe. Eventually, enough people fought against it so that the pyramid got toppled, but a lot of people died. So when we hear a comment that seems like it's building this bottom layer of the pyramid, what are some sentences that we could say? Because we have to practice saying this stuff. Sometimes I just say, ouch, right? And if I just say, ouch, I know it's not too many words. I can get it out of my throat even when I feel really nervous. And it gives me a chance to interrupt what's happening and then take a breath and then hopefully enter into a conversation. What else could we say? I asked Rob to make sure this doesn't fall before it's supposed to. Thank you. What else? Does anybody have any other ideas about what you could say? Yeah. What? Time out. Yeah. Excuse me? Not okay. Yeah. Did that make you feel good to say it? Yeah. So this might be the kind of thing that if you hear something at school or wherever on the playground and you feel like, oh, that made me feel weird, you can take it at home and practice it with the people who you live with. Practice like, what could I have said? I do this all the time. I should have said something in that moment, but I'm trying to figure out the relationship with that person. All sorts of things get in the way, and I actually have to practice. We practice all sorts of things. Those of us who play instruments and sing, we practice all the time. We actually have to practice saying this stuff, right? So there's some great ideas here. Because when we speak up, we are punching that pyramid right here at the level of the words, right? And Eli is going to come up and show us what that looks like. Because who doesn't want to punch a pyramid? Yeah. Thank you, Eli. It's nice to have it toppled, right? But what do you notice? Yeah. The bottom layer is still there. The bottom layer, do you remember, anybody remember what that was? That one's up here. Yeah, it's in our thoughts. So even when it gets interrupted, our work is still to pay attention to our thoughts, right? So that we can take responsibility for them, and so that we can make sure that we are really honoring the dignity and the worth of every person. Because as we know, in so many ways, that is our first Unitarian Universalist principle. This congregation has been utterly blessed to have Rob Kinslow with us. Reverend Rob, for the last, I don't know how many weeks, a bunch, 10 or so, 10. This is Rob's last day here. As I mentioned at the beginning, Rob is a seminary mate of mine. who was ordained last spring. And I wrote him a little song at that point, and I'm going to sing it for him now. And then we're going to send Rob and the kids off to RE class, and Rob's going to take your chalice today. Minister of magic, weaver of light, spreader of compassion, magician of delight. We are your people, we claim you as ours. In joyful celebration, we wrap you in the warmth of our love. Thank you, Rob. And I think we'll just remain seated for a Li. This next song, the words were written by the revered Hannah Senesh in 1943. She was a Jewish woman who parachuted into Yugoslavia to rescue Hungarian Jews who were about to be deported to Auschwitz. She was caught during that mission and sent to Auschwitz herself. These are her words. I invite you to get as comfortable as you can in your body as it is right now, to open and make room for the breath, to connect with what for you is ground, with what for you is spirit. I'll begin our time of prayer with these words from Rabbi Rami Shapiro. This poem was part of an interfaith ritual on the retreat I just returned from. We are embraced by arms that find us even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved by an unending love. We are loved
by an unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us, even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved by an unending love. We are loved by an unending love. Embraced, touched, soothed, and counseled. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. We are loved by an unending love. Together we open, we feel our way into the implications of an unending love, always there for us in any moment that we are able to receive. Together we bring our lives, ourselves, our joys, our needs, our concerns, our fears, our sorrows. I'll begin today with a celebration. Happy 70th birthday to Peg Lorenz. We celebrate with Don T., who is on the mend. And today we send our deepest prayers for the Sanchez family of Groton. We send our prayers of healing and love for Karen A. and her family. Karen is hospitalized again. For Bob Sosi, who is struggling. For Lorraine and Pamela and Aaliyah, all of whom are recovering from surgery at home. For Christina A., who is recovering from a fall and is on crutches with 2 little kids at home. And for Wendy, Doris, Karen O'Neill's father, Jackie's mother, and Carol's sister, Lois. And we send our prayers for Ellen Allen's son, John, for his deep desire for employment with a company dedicated to the care of animals. You're invited now to add your own joy or concern or sorrow in the chat if you're watching together with someone else, or otherwise to name them for yourself, to attend to them for a moment. They're important. You are always welcome to send prayer requests to prayers@uugroton.org for us to pray out loud on Sunday mornings and or for me to pray in the evenings in our church sanctuary. What touches one of us touches all of us, beloveds. I will sing us into a period of shared silence with this short piece by Isla Nerio. I feel the winds of the west out breath, letting go of my leaves, all I do not need. Into the silence of a fall sunset, I release, receive, getting ready for the silence.
I'd like to invite Ellen Brandt to come forward and talk a little bit about our Renewal of Giving time.
We are in the time of renewal of giving when members and friends are asked to financially support the church. And the Renewal of Giving team asked me to tell you a little bit about why I do. My name is Ellen Brandt. I have been on the First Parish Church of Groton mailing list for over 3 decades, but I didn't actually become an active member until sometime after Aaliyah became minister 21 years ago. I came seeking spiritual growth for myself and a desire to become part of a community that sought to work to make the world a better place for all. I love Aaliyah's sermons and readings, almost always finding them inspirational and thought-provoking. I love our phenomenal intern ministers too. Several years ago we had Karen Johnston, and now Li Kynvi have brought their own style and passions to help us expand our vision and understanding of what it means to be a blessing to this world. And I love the music. Shawn McCann is a truly exceptional director of music ministries, and we have many talented musicians in our congregation too. By participating in various small groups, workshops, committees, and volunteering, I have connected with other members of the congregation, and I've learned a lot from them too. So many interesting and passionate and compassionate people are here, making the world a better place in a variety of different ways. This is all enough to keep me coming back and to earn my financial support too. But 6 years ago, I learned another importance of belonging to and contributing to this congregation. My husband died unexpectedly. I was in shock, terrified, clueless, but somehow magically, Aaliyah was at my side, comforting me, guiding me, and so were many, many other members of this community. They picked up my children at college, 5 and 6 hour round trips, provided meals, emotional support, cards, hugs, phone calls. I made it through the tough times because I was held in love. It's reassuring to be part of a community that not only provides inspiration and motivation to become a better person, but also helps connect us with each other, look out for each other, and be ready at a moment's notice to provide support as needed. I hope you will join me in being generous with your financial support of First Parish Church of Groton.
Before I begin my sermon this morning, there is a little zipper song by Sarah Salem that I would like to weave throughout, and I want to invite you to sing it with me. The first word changes each time, but then the rest of it stays the same. It goes like this. Her original verse is lean back. So the words are just lean back, they say, we're right here. It goes like this. Lean back, they say, lean back, they say, we're right here, we're right here. That's it. Lean back, they say, lean back, they say, we're right here, we're right here. So feel free to join at any point. In 1984, I was studying in Germany, and I fell in love with someone whose father was an identical twin. The Singer twins were born to a Jewish mother in Berlin in 1935. Things were already getting bad for Jewish people, and a Catholic family that the mom worked for told her they had lots of kids And if she ever needed this, they might be able to hide one of the twins amongst their kids. Needless to say, it became necessary. She was unable to find a family for the other twin, but David went to live with this Catholic family, and they immediately taught him that if anything scary happened, if anyone he didn't know started asking him questions, he was to cross himself, fold his hands, and start saying the Our Father over and over again. They told him it would calm him and it would keep him safe. And they were right. But on November 29th, 1942, Joachim Singer and his mother were on Transport 23 from Berlin to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Auschwitz is the largest German Nazi concentration and extermination camp located in Poland. Joachim and David were 7 years old. David survived. Joachim did not. In fact, none of the rest of his family did. David eventually married a woman who survived because she was ferried to Sweden as a child. In 1956, that couple named their oldest child after Joachim. In 1998, I too named my oldest child, Josie, after Joachim. Remember, they say, remember, they say, we're right here, we're right here. The grounds of Auschwitz-Birkenau were turned into a memorial and museum in 1947, just 2 years after the camp was liberated. I had long wanted to spend time there, but not just a few hours or a day. And I finally found the framework for doing that with the Zen Peacemakers Bearing Witness retreat. On the retreat, 3 Buddhist tenets comprised our central instructions: not knowing, bearing witness, and loving action. Not knowing. When I can remember to practice not knowing, it feels like a huge relief to me. I don't need to know how the Holocaust could have happened. I don't need to pretend I understand. I don't need to enlarge the small amount of facts that I have into a story that's somehow all-encompassing, that's somehow reassuring to me. I have permission not to know. To me, feels like I have permission to be right-sized, to have, in fact, the mind I have, which cannot comprehend the enormity of it. When my mind tries to grasp even just Auschwitz-Birkenau, let alone the rest of the Holocaust, I reduce it. Because in my desperate attempt for something to understand, I'm limiting what I can experience. I'm limiting what I can learn. Not knowing can bring us into a deep feeling of curiosity, of exploration, of openness without judgment. And that is a seed for empathy. Sonia Renee Taylor talks about this in her book, The Body is Not an Apology. She said it so beautifully. When we liberate ourselves from the expectation that we must have all things figured out, we enter a sanctuary of empathy. So, not knowing. The second tenet is bearing witness. Bearing witness to the joy, to the suffering. Bearing witness is about being radically open to everything that arises within us, outside of us. It's a stance of deep observation. It's a stance of presence, of full engagement, of embodied, alive awareness. It's being curious and compassionate. And in that state, there's nothing that we can't bear witness to, no matter how awful or no matter how wonderful.
That's bearing witness. The third tenet is loving action, or love in action. So it is being in the not knowing, it's bearing witness, and then it's doing whatever it is that serves love and compassion right now. This year, there were 32 of us on my retreat from 11 countries, many, many faiths, many ages, many stories. The structure of this retreat has been crafted and carefully tended to over 25 plus years. And it's set up to be emergent. On the retreat, there are 3 people on staff whose job is called Spirit Keeper. They pay close attention to what's happening with the group, with the participants as a whole. And they meet every afternoon to make plans for the next day. I mean, they have an overall structure, but they change it according to what's actually happening that year. And then they spend a lot of time between retreats talking about what happened and what they should do next year. We stayed at the Center for Dialogue and Prayer, which is a peaceful place within walking distance of the camps. And each morning we began in silence. We rolled out of bed early, we got coffee, tea, and we went to our small groups directly. My small group had 6 people. We were from Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, Israel, Brazil, and the United States. We gathered in a circle, we sat in silence, and then we took turns speaking and feeling our way into the question, what is alive for me right now? What is most alive for me right now? We were all there facing what humanity has done in Auschwitz and elsewhere, and what we continue to do. We're there feeling it, we're mourning together, we're really taking a serious venture into what humans are capable of. And we're also each facing ourselves in the context of Auschwitz. Like everybody else, I faced my past, my family of origin, my faith. I faced my defenses and my collapse and my resilience. I faced my compassion and my despair and my capacity. And it's just so important and potent to bear witness to each other, to offer each other uninterrupted space and time, to let it all unfold, to be witnessed and held. Open, they say, we're right here, we're right here. After small groups and breakfast, we went to the camps. The German Nazis deported at least 1.3 million people from 20 different countries to Auschwitz, and at least 1.1 million were murdered there. 90% of those killed were Jewish. The others were non-Jewish Poles. They were resistors, Jehovah's Witnesses, gay people, Roma, Soviet POWs, and others. The vast majority of people who arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau were sent to gas chambers soon after they arrived. Those who were selected as strong enough to provide the slave labor were tattooed and imprisoned. On the retreat, we spent some time in what's called Auschwitz I, but most of our days were outside at Birkenau, which is much larger. It's more than 400 acres, miles of barbed wire, long, muddy pathways, guard towers, the remains of barracks, the rubble of crematorium. And every day, we did several sessions of sitting meditation on the selection site near the main gate of Birkenau, right next to the railroad tracks. That's what you see in the photograph in the NNO this week.
This is the selection site where a German Nazi doctor, casually pointing in one direction or the other, decided whether each person went directly to the gas chamber or whether they became a prisoner. And that's where we sat, sometimes in silence, sometimes chanting the names of Shoah victims, including names that each of us carried with us. I brought 48 names, as Marcel mentioned, from him and his cousin, also from Aaliyah and from other families at First Parish, from the UU congregations in Framingham and Montpelier, and from friends and family of mine. We had an altar there with names and candles and various things. I added 2 pennies, which was Rebecca Pike's request, to reflect the Groton Dunstable Penny Project begun in 2006. There were about 1.5 million children killed in the Holocaust, but that number is just a statistic. So the kids collected 1.5 million pennies so that they could see and feel how big that number really is. On the retreat, we had rituals. Some of our rituals were interfaith, others were Jewish, Buddhist, Christian. We had rituals in different locations around Birkenau and Auschwitz I. So near Block 11, in the women's barracks, in the men's barracks at night, in the children's barracks, at the gas chamber, at the crematoria, and around the ash pond. I spent a lot of time still or moving very slowly, silent, or speaking very quietly, listening, not knowing, bearing witness. Some days it rained. We sat, we walked, we read names in the rain. The director of the retreat center charged us with listening to the soil. So I listened. The gray mud that stuck to everything told me it was sacred. Over 1 million people turned to ash and smoke in that place. My relationship with the ground changed profoundly. Listen, they say, listen, they say, we're right here, we're right here. As many of you know, I am a prayer, and prayer was very present for me. It was connected to really living in the sacred during those days, in the depth. My primary prayers were breath and the simple words, open, keep opening, feel, keep feeling. The structure of the retreat offered so much space, so much silence, that I felt like a radio receiver. And I found I was tuned to some frequencies in certain locations and very quiet in other. In some places, I found myself very still and attentive. Other places I went, it was like I was suddenly where I was tuned to, and my entire body responded. I got flooded with emotion, sort of like a faucet that just got turned on. I would find myself unexpectedly sobbing. And I wasn't thinking or imagining anything in those moments. It felt like I was just a permeable human through whom these intense emotions found refuge and expression. That's the only way I can find to describe it. It felt like a gift to be with them, to be with all those souls there, to let them in, to feel them so intimately. And sometimes that feeling felt like free falling into disintegration and then stepping out into a tender and pure love that I can't even describe. It felt like a gift to shed hundreds of tears that didn't really belong to me, and yet they did. Then the more tears I shed, the more I opened, the more compassion I can experience for all of humanity. Auschwitz asked me to gaze directly at my own capacity for anger as well, at my own capacity for dehumanizing others and generally contributing to pain in the world. I stared right at it when I observed my responses to the perpetrators, when I looked at the photographs. The thing is, those people weren't monsters, they were humans. They had parents who cared for them. Some of them had spouses. They had children, maybe, that they played with, that they cuddled. And I had to ask myself, what would I have done? Doesn't it depend on the circumstances? I have a 23-year-old. If I'd had a 23-year-old able-bodied German son in wartime, I would have been a frightened and protective, loving parent. What would I have told my son to do? Listen, they say, we're right here, we're right here. And if I were to have been lucky enough to survive the selection and the process of becoming a number and a starving prisoner surrounded by terror, then what? What would I have been able to take refuge in? Could I have taken refuge in the music in my mind? Could I have protected myself, my spirit, from internal enslavement? In what moments would I have been able to pray, to continue loving the world, to envision a future? Could I still have understood hope and trust? Could I even for a few moments here and there have modeled those? I doubt it. Could I have helped others mend their broken hearts and turn toward life? I want to think so, but I don't know. In which moments would I have shared my bread, and in which moments would I have stolen? How can I even guess what real hunger does to a person, or that kind of fear? When would I have reached for somebody's hand? And when would I have curled in on myself and surrendered to despair? Could I have looked at the sky and felt anything at all? One thing I have learned from this experience is that for us adults who are gifted with the capacity for advanced thought, the biggest, most dangerous selection site is the one we have in our own mind. When I categorize people as other, then instead of bearing witness to their otherness, instead of really opening to how they believe and think quite differently from I start thinking in terms of us and them, and I'm always in favor of us. That's my selection site. All genocide begins in the mind. That pyramid of hate we built, the bottom layer is their unchecked fear of difference, stereotyping, lack of awareness of our own privilege. I don't know about you, but I am capable of all that and more on a daily basis. As a Unitarian Universalist, though, my work as a person of faith is to notice and interrupt myself when, hopefully before, I dehumanize other people, and to speak up, as hard as that is, when that's happening around me. There are many subjects that we can see clearly have multiple sides and complex subtlety, but dehumanization is not one of them. I remember so clearly the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. I was quite sick with COVID at the time, and I saw a photo of one of the rioters in a sweatshirt that said, Camp Auschwitz. Everything in me was so repulsed by his actions, by the ideology he represents, by the existence of that sweatshirt, that every time I think of it, my work becomes again not to dehumanize that guy. I have to see him as fully human as I am, and not as fundamentally separate. My work is to disagree with him out loud, in the pulpit, wherever and whenever I can, boldly and respectfully. My work is to say how meditating at Auschwitz changes me. And my work is not to dehumanize that man. And as Unitarian Universalists, I believe our work is to discern in the face of every single person their unique and absolute, unquestionable human dignity. Our work is to remember that the biggest, most dangerous selection site is the one in our minds. My work is to honor the victims of the Shoah and what they lost by owning that those of us who are alive now bear the responsibility for the future of this world. Our work is to honor what they lost by cherishing our lives, by taking wildly good care of our own souls, by taking care of each other, so that we can, as often as possible, do the next right thing that serves love and compassion. And then the next right thing, and never stopping. What else is our work? We get to decide that in this moment, and then again in the next. Cherish, they say. Cherish, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Hello, sun. I chose Blue Boat Home as our closing hymn today because so many of us know it and love it, because we can sway gently as we sit or stand, because we can feel our voices in our chest, we can hear each other, we can see our beautiful meeting house for those of us who are here in person. We can be downtown together. So please rise in body or spirit for Blue Boat Home.
Still my dry land heart
So those of you who have children, children in RE, feel free to leave during the postlude. The rest of us will stay for the postlude. People who are moving chairs, move chairs. The rest of us can leave them be. Silent rocks are available. And come talk if you want to talk to me. I would love to hear anything from any of you. Okay? So, and by way of traditional benediction, place one hand on our hearts and the other, reach out, invite you to see one another. You're gorgeous. Know that we are connected through strong and sturdy threads of love. Go in peace, beloveds. Be a blessing to this world.